you unmuted? Right. You're on mute.
Yeah, hi everybody. How are you doing?
We're all good. How are you?
Good, thanks. How's your day gone?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. I'm glad. I think we're still waiting for a couple more judges. And are we waiting for somebody else on your side too?
No, actually, we were a team of 4, but unfortunately, Augie had a baseball match and their schedule sort of shifted, and he's traveling right now. He was supposed to travel tomorrow during evening, but he had no choice, and we're really sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries at all. I think maybe we'll give it another minute or so and see if we can collect another judge or two. We have three remaining, and we've had pretty good luck with having everybody scheduled show up.
Yeah. Also, we just wanted to check if all of us are audible because we're still using one microphone. Otherwise, a lot of interference.
Yeah.
Are we all audible?
We're all okay.
Yep.
Great. Great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah, you all sound really great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna apologize in advance if my dog makes a noise. She's
Oh.
starting to get a little fussy.
That's okay. We actually had our handout ready. I'm not sure how you want us to share it online. Do we share a link? Just has some extra information about our presentation.
Oh, you can share a screen when I turn it over to you. Are you able to do that? Or is it separate from your presentation?
It's separate. Yeah, it's just like an extra source of information. It's not something that's we're not going to include it in our presentation. It's just
Maybe you could put a
mention it,
link in the chat.
right? Yeah, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be really great.
Right.
So I see we have Bob that joined us. So I'll go ahead and get started with introductions for the judges, and then I'll turn it over to you. And I'm just going to ask that no one says where it is that they're from. So judges, we don't say where we're in terms of our school and how we're connected to LMU, what we do for a living and whatnot. But yeah, so everybody's all on the same page. So this is a blind competition. So my name is Lisa Laird. I am the chief strategist for an investment consultancy called Investment Office Resources. And one of the things that we do is help organizations determine how their values can be supported by their investment portfolio. So Rob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you very much, team. I am by training a financial advisor and work for a company that is always voted in the top 5 or 10 in the country in terms of ethics. I think because they give a lot of their money away, which is in their own best interest too. So they're a non-for-profit because of that, and they get certain tax exemptions. But at the end of the day, it's all business for good. And as I said, I'm honored to be here as a judge for this competition. So welcome and happy to meet you.
Thank you.
And Bob. Oh, you're on mute. I did it too.
I think it's still muted.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, now it works.
How's that?
Yeah.
Great.
I'm Bob Stone. I'm a retired civil servant. I held senior positions in the Defense Department and the White House. For several years, I taught business ethics, and I've written about ethics.
So thank you, fellow judges, for being here and for your participation. And now I will turn it over to the case team, Union Consulting Group, to introduce yourselves, but no schools.
Yeah, perfect. I think we've also got it as the first slide of our presentation itself. So maybe we'll pull that up first.
Yeah. I think you can start sharing our presentation.
Right.
Just the first slide.
And I hope all of us are audible. If we aren't, please feel free to stop us. We'll figure that out. But to start off our introductions, we are Union Consulting Group, and we're talking about Coca-Cola, the new Cola Wars. which is us talking about the workers' rights in the Coca-Cola company and the ethics around it. I'll hand it off to Priyanka. Yep.
I'm going to have you pause for just a quick second because I need to read a little paragraph first. So I'm going to read that paragraph and then I'll have you launch off into your presentation if that's okay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So my paragraph is, in this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, the teams will be uninterrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 10 to 15 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside of the role playing.
Right.
Okay, and with that, we are off to the races.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Priyanka, if you wish to introduce yourself first.
So, hello, my name is Priyanka Gupta. I'm an econ major, and I'm the financial analyst at Union Consulting Group.
Hello, everybody. I'm Parikshit Raichaudhary. I'm majoring in economics and political science. And for today, I'm the legal analyst for Union Consulting Group.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ananya Manchanda, and I'm majoring in economics and computer science. And for today, I'll be the ethical analyst for the group.
And to set the context as well, today we are presenting as Coca-Cola, and we are also presenting to the board of Coca-Cola, which will be our judging panel for today. Now, moving on, let's understand the company and its networks. So at the very first outset, Coca-Cola has 3 main categories of products. At the very outset, it's got sugar sweetened and other forms of sweetened beverages with sparkling water bases. That's your typical Coke drink that you see all the time. You also have value-added dairy products, which will mainly be around adding coffee to dairy products, and that's one side of the beverage side. And also, they also have a lot of sports drinks, which are usually unsweetened, but then it ranges depending on the product itself. They have 200 bottling partners across the world, 950 production facilities, 30 million retail outlets, and about 2.2 billion servings a day. So we understand the magnitude of what we are working with, and also the scale at which workers are participating in the Coca-Cola network at large globally. Now, moving on, let's understand how Coca-Cola as a company functions. They're always trying to innovate faster. They're trying to stop things that don't really work, which we'll be seeing a lot today. And at the same time, they're moving as fast as they can to break down the barriers to progress. This is coming directly from the CEO's test in 2023 itself. And that's a founding principle that encompasses the solutions we talk about today.
Now, we'll be further going on into Coca-Cola's operating system. We all know that Coca-Cola is a really big company, and therefore it operates through multiple local channels. The company manufactures and sells concentrates, beverage bases, and syrups to bottling operations. From there, the bottlers pack, merchandise, and distribute the final branded beverages to customers. The customers are such as grocery stores, restaurants, street vendors, movie theaters, basically wherever we can find Coca-Cola, and the customers further sell it to the consumers. Now, we will be further talking about the fact that shareholders in the Coca-Cola company are already concerned about the transparency the company has with regards to the labor and human rights. Just like, for example, in the 2023 statement of the annual meetings of share owners, Vanguard is advising people not to invest in Coke because of the lack of transparency in their human rights practices, which can lead to financial, legal, and reputational risks that can affect the firm's long-term value. Further, the shareholders are requesting the company to issue transparency reports on global public and human rights annually, which will disclose the company's expenditure and activities outside the United States.
So now that we've set context for what we're going to dive into, we are mainly focusing on the 8th Sustainable Development Goal from the United Nations, which is to promote decent work and economic growth. I think this fits our company model the most, especially because of the number of people they're employing across the world, and at the same time, the ethics and the labor rights that these people have. Moving forward, we are going to focus on the workers of Colombia and the Philippines, but we're also going to look at child rights and child labor in El Salvador and Mexico. And towards the end of the presentation, we're going to combine those issues together to find a unified solution.
Now, looking forward to Colombia's worker rights, there is a union known as Cilandril Union. It is a workers' union in Colombia which has been protesting against wage packages and workers' law for a very long time. The wage packages includes payments, health hazards, working hours, etc. Workers are blaming Coca-Cola for the issue that are taking place in the bottling plants. For example, there's a plant in Medellin where the police came and forcibly removed the protesters that refused to remove the distribution of vehicles. This enraged them more and they blamed Coca-Cola company for it. All of it together made Sinatra sue Coke in Miami, which resulted in gaining global reputation. And we can see that it caused the shareholders in asking for transparency reports and Vanguard cautioning the public about these issues.
Our next aspect of the issue focuses on workers' layoffs in Philippines. It all started when the government in 2018 imposed a 12 pesos per liter tax on Coca-Cola. All Coca-Cola products produced using corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, and a 6 pesos per liter tax on Coca-Cola produced from sugar. That made refined sugar a much cheaper raw material as compared to corn syrup. That made Coca-Cola transform all its operations to 100% sugar products. It was left with a large high fructose corn syrup stock. On the other hand, it faced lower sales due to a high tax imposition, and as a result, it faced a higher cost of manufacturing. It forced Coca-Cola to lay off thousands and thousands of workers in factories and bottling plants. Now, Coca-Cola had its reason in place. However, workers now started challenging the layoffs across the Philippines. Protests started erupting as the unions believed that these layoffs were unfair and they weren't given enough notice. Further miscommunications also led to the formation of union coalitions, and they started demanding that the workers that were laid off were to be brought back and the number of layoffs to be cut down. Now we start with a solution approach to the board of directors of Coca-Cola. The first prong of our approach would be the financial aspect. If we look at the graph in front of us, we see that mainly focusing on the hydration and sports energy drink brands, there has been an increase of 6% in revenue for each of these brands. And so, in order to cut down the increase in cost of manufacturing, if Coca-Cola starts focusing more on drinks that use less or no sugar, like hydration brands which include Aquarius or Body Armor, and sports energy drinks, it can offset the cost of manufacturing. It can also start using smaller or more convenient packaging for cost reduction purposes. We are all aware of the increasing awareness around fighting obesity amongst consumers. Coca-Cola can increase the production of such hydration brands and work on this particular cause so that it can target the consumer base which focuses on consuming products which uses less or no sugar. These factors can help achieve an increased sales portfolio, facilitate the formation of a larger and a stronger labor force by reducing layoffs, and also offset the increased cost of production due to the tax imposition. Now we will be focusing on the legal aspect of the review system, which focuses on the collaboration of labor union leaders and the firm.
So let's characterize the problem we have at hand. In both countries, we are seeing that a lot of these issues are with issues that are occurring down the supply chain. They're not exactly at Coke facilities, but they are with bottling plants. They're with other suppliers that directly supply to Coke. So what we propose is a strong review system for labor and human rights, where it looks at the entire supply chain as a whole. How does this work? Let's look at the membership of this review system at the first place. At first, we've got Coke's senior management, because naturally that will be part of the decision making. We're also going to include labor and human rights experts who can create recommendations towards how you can improve the labor and human rights and all the negotiations that will come into place in these review systems. At the same time, there are also going to be local labor union leaders. These are the people who are on the ground. These are the people who are affected the most, and they drive the opinion and drive the consensus towards what happens on the ground. So they need to be part of the conversation. And fourth, we need human rights observers. A lot of the reporting that has been done on these issues has been through third-party human rights observers like the Human Rights Watch. And it's important for them to be strong compliance managers in the space where they can keep reporting what's happening on the ground, because it is unfeasible for any of the other members to be running that. Let's understand the second stage of this. What are the mechanics of this? What does this review system really do? First of all, it involves discussing and approving all the key policies that affect workers on the ground. This is not just in coke facilities. These are in bottling plants, these are in sugarcane plantations, it's everywhere. We understand that the supply chain as a whole is Coca-Cola's responsibility. Secondly, if there are decisions which people do not agree with, especially amongst the unions, they can create a stay on the decision. They can bring it to the discussion table, chart out a way that they can solve it amicably across all 4 members of the review system itself, and then get sent it back. This means a problem that exists does not persist for a very long time. Let's look at stage 3 of this, the global standards. Coke, as a large, gigantic multinational company, has to have an internal baseline for what it means to be working for Coke or on a supply chain. This means that all of their principles, all of their standards apply across the world. And it's not to say that it can change from region to region. Of course, that is not to say that it bypasses local legislation, but it's to improve upon them and to create that baseline to say that these are the minimum goals that as a company we will be adhering to. What are the outcomes of this? Let's understand that Coke's shareholders themselves are demanding transparency when it comes to human rights. They're demanding proper audits. They're demanding audits that actually are useful and can be read. This review system itself will be looking at that and publishing these reports and overseeing how these audits are created. At the same time, it's reducing conflict with these unions. These unions are a PR nightmare for Coke. And at the same time, it's not a good idea to have a lot of workers under you who are poorly paid and are working in hazardous conditions. It reduces conflicts with these unions because they are at the drawing board. They are conversing with Coke on these matters. And at the same time, it includes workers at the lower rungs of the supply chain. These are people who are not directly engaging with Coca-Cola, but are oppressed because of the business practices in some ways, and hence they are considered in this review system. It's mainly coming through the unions and the rights observers. So again, from an ethical standpoint, it's important that as a Coke, the entire trickle-down system works for them. So to summarize, we've thrown a lot of information at you already. How does this entire system work at this stage? At the very first instance, in the Philippines, we are reducing the size of the packaging of the drinks that they're selling so that they can sell more units at a fairly decent price. And at the same time, it's increasing production of hydration-based brands, mainly because they aren't taxed as sugar-sweetened beverages or as concentrate-based beverages. Of course, this means that the reduced cost of production as well as the increase in sales allows them to not lay off so many workers in the Philippines. That is the key problem we are trying to fix. And at the second level, the review system is what we are setting up globally for it to work across the world in every system. That includes a board of all the major stakeholders who review and approve all the decisions that affect the local laborers. And that means you have improved labor and human rights. And at the very end, you have cooperation and reduced conflict, neither of which any party wants. It's a win-win in general.
Further, we'll be talking about child labor in Mexico and El Salvador. The legal age to work in Mexico and El Salvador is 14. But children in Mexico and we can still see a lot of child labor in Mexico and El Salvador. And the children are subjected to the worst form of labor, which includes sex trafficking and all the job exploitation. Plantations that supply sugarcane to major sugar mills regularly use child labor. For example, Coca-Cola uses Salvadorian sugar to domestically consume in El Salvador. The company's local bottler purchases refined sugar at El Salvador's largest mill, which has reportedly used a lot of child labor. Medical care is also often not available in the plantations, and children frequently need to pay for their own cost of medical treatment. They are not reimbursed by their employers despite the various provisions of labor code that makes employers responsible for the medical expenses resulting from the on-the-job injuries. Now, the thing is, Coca-Cola's code of conduct covers the direct suppliers, which are the sugar mills, but it does not cover the sugar plantations. It doesn't cover the sugar plantations at all. But if the Coca-Cola is serious about avoiding complicity in the use of hazardous child labor, the company should recognize that its responsibility to ensure the respect for child rights extend beyond its direct suppliers. Now, all of us, we are living in the 21st century, and all of us realize how important education is. Moreover, how important education is for little children. From reports, children in Mexico and El Salvador do not attend school, especially during the harvest season, or they just drop out altogether. Even for other children who are interested in education and really want to study, the only way their family can afford the cost of education is if they work on the plantations. Coca-Cola is trying to make efforts for eradication of child labor, like the company only buys from sugar mills that adhere to the child labor policy. Even in sugarcane fields, a good number of children have been removed who are underage.
No, I'm sorry for what happened with the lights. The classroom shuts off for some time. But to understand and grapple with the problem that we are facing today is why the review system is important. Because the review system is bringing these plantations within the purview of course analysis to understand where compliance works. So at the very first stage, we need strong compliance at the sugar mill level and to understand who they are sourcing their sugarcane from, whether these plantations are employing children. And therefore, this expanse of the review system we are creating allows us to first monitor that and understand the policies of these sugar plantations and the sugar mills. At the second stage, we are asking the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, that already takes a lot of donations from Coca-Cola for its annual mandate to direct some of its efforts towards these communities. That is in terms of primary education for these children and healthcare. This is not additional money that Coca-Cola is putting in, but mainly asking the UNDP to channelize its existing donations towards these communities so that we can actually look at the development of these children in these communities. At the third stage, the review system itself is helping us create a space for improving wages for the labor and these sugar plantations and these bottling plants. Because we need to understand a lot of the reasons why children are employed is also the economic reason, because they can't afford it. And it's important for Coke to be paying higher prices for the sugar that they source. But we sometimes have to beg the question, how economical is that for Coke to pay a higher price for sugar? And that's what we're going to cover next in the next slide.
So this procedure lays out a basic guideline for funding for incentivizing mills to adhere to policies regarding child labor. We know that Philippines was the biggest importer of corn syrup from China before the tax law imposed 12 pesos per liter tax for all products which used corn syrup. We suggest that Coca-Cola channelizes all the surplus stock of corn syrup to Mexico by importing that supply from Philippines and to produce drinks before selling it at a higher price in its domestic market. An increasing mutual trust and investment has been observed in operations between Mexico and Philippines, which facilitates the process of import of Coca-Cola bottles and the distribution of this product. Further information on this has been given in our handout. As of now, we observe that around 290,000 tons of China's exports were lying as a bulk in Philippines. If we use all of that bulk and multiply with the price of a 2-liter bottle in Mexico, we get an approximated revenue of around $350,000. And the financial benefit and significance of it is that the fourth quarter result of the year 2022 saw an increase in revenue by 14.9%, which was mainly driven by volume growth and higher pricing initiatives. Therefore, the cost of a 2-liter bottle in the Philippines is around 39 pesos. That would be around $0.72 US. And if it would export all of it to Mexico, we could assume a 10% increase in price in imports and a 16% VAT, which could bring us around $1. And if we multiply that with the total volume that we discussed earlier, Coca-Cola sees a net profit, and it also observes an increase in revenue, which is approximately 10.5% from before. The significance of this procedure is that the funds can be directed towards the welfare of workers by following this procedure, and thus ensuring a sustainable working environment for laborers. This entire complex chain can be easily summarized here, where we see that Mexico imports corn syrup from the Philippines. In Philippines, the price is around 39 pesos, which would be around 0.72 US dollars, and including all the VAT and the increased price that Philippines could impose on the corn syrup while exporting all of it to Mexico, it would bring us around to $1. And after Mexico sells all of the bulk in the domestic market, it observes an increase in revenue by 10.57%. All of these funds can be used to devote all the money towards incentivizing these sugar mills by buying products at a higher price that ensures that these mills do not engage with sugar plantations which employ child labor. To conclude it all, we see that fair trade is a trading partnership, which is extremely essential for Coca-Cola to maintain transparency with its human rights policies and to have healthier, better investor relationships. We already discussed that due to protests and campaigning against Coca-Cola, it suffers a huge loss to its reputation, which affects its future sustainable projects with public or private investors. It is about to work on a future sustainable project with its tech partners, which focuses on recycling plastic. And these projects can only be ensured to have a successful future if it has trustworthy relationship with its laborers and its shareholders. And thus, our solutions focus on the financial benefit of the firm, the ethical and the sustainable aspect of the solution, which focuses on the livelihoods and the lives which are at stake of all the child laborers and actual workers in Philippines. All of it all boils down to a trusted relationship and transparency in Coca-Cola's policies and a sustainable working environment for all its workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the presentation. I had a question going back to the thinking about smaller packaging and the environmental impact that would have and the cost of retooling our machines to accommodate that smaller packaging. Can you comment on that? And then also comment on the non-sugar-based beverages. You know, we bought Zico, and then several years later, actually just in 2021, we sold Zico. And so kind of, you know, in one sense, getting out of the non-sugar-based beverage business.
Right.
So those two comments, please.
Right. And then could you stop screen sharing?
Oh yeah, sure.
Right. So I can cover the first aspect of it. As far as smaller packaging goes, this came out from Coca-Cola statement itself that it has to start focusing on packaging that can be recycled. So that sort of takes care of the sustainable development part of the business, that it is focusing on larger volume, yes, but also smaller packaging focuses on easier disposal, and also the fact that it's using products that can be recycled. So to sort of offset the higher cost of manufacturing it can go through when it recycles all of its products, it uses smaller packaging.
And at the same time, to build off that, this law was passed in 2018 in Philippines. And right then, within a year, Coca-Cola decided that these decisions are already going to be made, because for them, it was absolutely unaffordable to make high fructose corn syrup-based drinks because it's a 16% VAT on that. It's not going to work for them. So in order to do that, they first reduced the size of their bottles. If memory serves me right, it was about 75 ml per bottle that they were shifting down. And they were able to do that quite easily within the plants that they already had. So what we are recommending is that they need to do that more aggressively because their sales are still pretty low, which is why they are still having to lay off a lot of people. And at the same time, we're also including the fact that they have a lot of spare corn syrup that's lying out that they can't use. So that has to be diverted towards Mexico. And at the same time, there's the same thing that they've done with their water-based companies that they already have, because primarily in Philippines, that's where their major market share has gone into now, because even people are still hesitant to pay that extra 6 peso VAT that they have on the usual drinks, just that sugar sweetened. So that's still become their main primary market with water. And that has to be more aggressive and there has to be investments towards that to
Yeah.
make sure that
And to
happens.
just add to that, I think apart from hydration brands can also focus on sports energy drinks, because there's also growing awareness about using less sugar amongst athletes as well. So it's not just about hydration brands, it also sort of extends its products to sports energy drinks and not super beverages that have a large concentration of sugar and sweeteners.
Okay. Questions from other members of the board? Rob?
Thank you very much. And I think your executive summary was also very well written. It seems like just listening to this presentation and understanding now a little bit more about the landscape here, there's a lot of stakeholders. So obviously we have the workers, we have the consumers, we have the government, we have Coca-Cola, we have labor unions, and we're trying to somehow strike some synergy between all of these parties as we determine, how do we improve in a sustainable lens and also avoid the massive layoffs. So we are obviously the board of directors of Coca-Cola, and we want to do what's best for our shareholders and return equity. We can't ignore the fact that this 6% tax of sugar has happened, because that's going to trickle down and affect us. And inevitably, there's going to be workforce pressures, as you've laid out very keenly. Just to kind of boil down to the bone, what we're trying to accomplish here, of all of those stakeholders that I mentioned, who is most important to target in your opinion, and why, in order to affect this positive change?
So I think in this process, to sort of target the problem of layoffs, I think the most important factor in this entire process for us has to be labor unions. Because I think if there's any issue with policies or laying off workers, we see a lot of violence in local areas, and that affects every stakeholder in question. And so because their reaction is always so quick and violent, I think it's always necessary to sort of maintain peaceful relationships with the labor unions, not to mention, of course, the other important factors which Parikshit can sort of mention.
I think it's also that these labor unions are generally of the bottling plants, which aren't under Coke supervision right now. And I think that stability is what's most important, because you can't get into a dispute resolution mode until unless violence on the ground goes away and lawsuits go away around that. Because this is a huge change for Coke as well. This was not a very anticipated beverage tax that would have come in 2018. They tried to do something in 2019. The pandemic hit after that. So in the present, I think calming the situation is most important. And therefore, the labor unions have to be given the voice that they've been asking for. And till now, the labor unions have been of the bottlers, and they could not access Coca-Cola. And I think that's important. They need to be able to access Coke and have that conversation, they need to be given the plan forward that there will be a change in the production line. There will be changes in the size of the packaging. We will sort out where the corn syrup is going to go, so we aren't going to lose money on it. And we will be going back to where we were as a company in the year or in 2 years. So I think that's most important.
Also, given by a solution, we have human rights observers on the ground who would basically be noticing and like observing the fact that the workers are getting everything they want. So that's why it can be possible that labor rights unions, they're like very content with the things that are happening, because there are people observing the stakes.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is my only question at this time. However, circle back to me. I might have another one.
Right. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry.
No.
I have a question about this change of emphasis you're recommending from sugar drinks to sports drinks and hydration. Today, we attempt to maximize our profits, if you will, in sugar drinks. And we also want to maximize our profits in sports and hydration drinks. We have 2 lines of business, and we're trying to do the best we can in both. Are you suggesting we tie our hands behind our back on the sugar drinks?
Not at all, sir. Not at all. I think the very brand that we are all aware of, we grew up drinking a lot of Coca-Cola drinks and all of them were heavy on sugar. So no, but it sort of, we are not saying, since it stopped using corn syrup, it's already sort of avoiding the higher tax imposition, the 12 pesos per liter tax imposition. It now has a 6 pesos per liter tax imposition. So with that, I think the cost of manufacturing does not rise that significantly. It's only that diversifying its branding strategy more towards hydration and sports energy drinks would be more helpful. At the same time, focusing on sweetened beverages too, but also diversifying it more, sort of to have a 5 to 10% increase in production value for sports energy drinks could surely help with its goal to sort of offset the increase in cost of manufacturing.
And I think it's good to note that Coke till today sells a lot of their usual Coke product in those red cans and red bottles. And it's all full of sugar. It's 100% sugar now because that's what Coke has decided to do. They've shifted to an all sugar product so that they avoid the corn syrup tax. So they're still selling the main product that they have. They're just not using corn syrup in it. So that avoids an extra 6 pesos of tax. And that corn syrup is what we are seeing is left out, which now needs to be diverted to Mexico. And that also helps us with the ethical issues in Latin America if we do that.
Also, there's a lot of potential for sports drink as well. As we can see, one of the Body Armor is one of the brands that is owned by the Coca-Cola company. And while doing our research, the thing that shocked us the most was that Body Armor has an estimated 50% increase in their revenue. So basically, sports drink and hydration drinks, they have a lot of potential in the future.
Yeah, I think Body Armor and Aquarius, so it has a lot of brands coming up with its campaign.
Can we shift back to talking about the labor and relations efforts that you are advocating? Who is coordinating and who is funding? Who are you proposing to coordinate and fund that effort?
If I understand your question right, you're talking about the discussions that you're proposing in the review system.
Right.
In that terms. So I think the bigger question that we are trying to solve here is the unions have been demanding a voice, which is what we're trying to put into the system. But in terms of compliance, I think that's where the cost comes in. That how are these discussions actually leading down to the average worker in the Philippines? And for those compliance measures, we are mainly looking at Human Rights Watch and these third-party observers that we've said that they should be part of the review system. Because if we do that, they're already doing this work on the ground in every village, in every factory in the Philippines, in Latin America. And their reports have been most consequential in bringing these to light, in the investors in Coca-Cola, in the shareholders annual meeting, bringing these issues up and saying we need a transparency report. So if you have the backing of these observers who are fairly validated and they're known to be very powerful institutions like Reuters or your Human Rights Watch, if we are bringing them to the body and then we are saying that, okay, we've got the policies, we need someone to check, and you've been doing that already. So maybe that coordination between these bodies with the Coke's management in this review system works together so they can flag off issues. Because we also as a company want our workers to not suffer, but then we need that information to come quickly, and these bodies are already doing it. So that's how we bring it in.
And also as our teams, we get to listen to each and every side of the story, as we are also giving the worker union the power. We have the human rights observers to keep a check on things. We have the LHR experts, and we also have the Coca-Cola senior management.
What other questions do we have?
I've been kind of ruminating on the financial piece, and I think that, again, at this board, everything always comes back to projections and financial analysis, and ultimately trying to revisit remuneration to our investors. So what kind of, inroads can we make as a company to look at maybe not a sensitivity analysis, but a of all the different scenarios that can come from this, you know, are we guaranteed that this is going to have a financial positive effect, or is it just kind of a let's wait and see? How favorable can the positive spillover effect be to our bottom line, and how long will that take?
Right. So it's definitely, I think, given all the fact and all the research that we've done, it's definitely not something that's up for a toss and something that we are not really sure of. But at the same time, that being said, especially when we're talking about the strong compliance step of the review system, I think it sort of tackles with incentivizing the sugar mills. And that was, I think, our greatest concern, even while working on our presentation, that it could have a higher cost, because if they are buying products from those sugar mills at a higher price, it could sort of increase their cost of manufacturing. However, at the same time, we kept on like the trends with what the import system could be, or what the trade relations between Mexico and Philippines could look like. And taking all of that into account, we do have a positive outlook. I think we do have a positive outlook that even if it does not have a significant profit margin, it will surely not experience a loss, at least as compared to the trade-off it's facing between sort of not having trustworthy relationships with its investors and having distrustful relationship with its labor unions as well. So sort of taking that cost into account, we do have a positive outlook with its increase in revenue and the returns it has for its investors.
And at the same time, we're looking, there's a legal piece to this as well.
Yeah.
When we are trying to do these exports from Mexico to Philippines, there's already an existing trade agreement that came up in 2015 that's helping us with the taxes between the two countries. So again, from our perspective, we're trying to build a solution that at least doesn't cost us money. So it's still a net neutral. So if something is increasing our cost, we're still offsetting that with the taxation agreements that have been built between Philippines and Mexico. And we've put that in the handout as well. We've not put in the entire tax code, but then there's an article on what exactly is happening. And at the same level, just talking about the shareholders, for us, it's an investor relations piece. Because if the investors themselves are asking that they need a transparency report, that there have been Vanguard's cautions about the ethics of how Coke is working and in the long term, whether it's going to be sustainable as a company, we need to address those. So from a shareholder's perspective as well, we are trying to address that with better audits, which was the second thing that we put in our handout as well, that audits aren't really working for the shareholders. So we're addressing that issue as well.
Okay, well, that's about 15 minutes of Q&A. So I thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. We will take off our board of directors hats and judge hats. So I'm just going to open it up to my fellow judges. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I'm very impressed. And I'm usually the kind of stone-faced person, or at least I try to be. You all did a great job. I think yeah, it's a big one to cover. As I said, there's a wide range of complexities, and you kind of go around the Christmas wreath, and there's, you know, so many different factors here. But I think just your general focus and overview, you were prepared on all the questions. I would advise you going into the 10-minute and the 90-minute presentations to keep that same enthusiasm and that same delivery. Again, it's a complicated issue. There's no easy solution. You're not going to find the Holy Grail to this overnight, but those are sometimes the best ethical dilemmas and presentations, because, you know, you have to be comfortable in the uncertainty. So one thing I would say is don't be afraid to play devil's advocate and entertain ideas why, you know, the board of directors might not want to do that, because if you preface it in their point of view, hey, these are some negatives to doing this that you might be considering. We already have thought about that, and this is what we're proposing to offset that. Then you've sort of already taken the elephant in the room and taken it back out of the room, if that makes any sense. But overall, you know, I was very impressed, and you did a great job.
Thank you so much.
Did you want to comment?
I don't have anything to add. I think you did a great job. You spread the work around. You were very responsive to our questions. I endorse what Rob said about the complexity. And I'm not sure how you do this, but I think in your next presentation, you really have to work to make it simpler.
Okay.
I think you're juggling a whole bunch of things, labor relations and child labor and sugar tax and Mexico and the Philippines. I found the presentation a little bewildering. I got into the sugar tax and suddenly there's 72-cent a bottle Coca-Cola.
That part was a little, we tried our best to summarize. Yes.
I just found it very complicated.
Okay.
And if you can simplify it, maybe reduce the number of issues, you'll have to figure that out.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
She rolls her eyes.
So I echo my fellow judges' thoughts. I would also say that in this context, like to refer to us as the Coca-Cola board versus referring to Coca-Cola, you can say you or your organization or something. But I loved your energy. I love the connection between the three of you. And you have an ease and a confidence about the way you speak that I have not seen in other presentations, and like bottle that. I mean, that is tremendous. So, and I love that you supported one another in your answers, and maybe it's the fact that you're just sitting right next to each other to create that connection, but it was spectacular. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that means a lot to us. Yeah.
You can tell that you like each other.
We do
Yeah.
actually. We sort of know each other beyond.
We've
I
known
think-
each other for a while at this point.
So while
Yeah.
working as well, but I think, yes, we kept tab on what each one of us was handling. I think the categories which each one of us was handling, and there was a little bit of intersection here and there. So we were aware of everything sort of that surrounded our presentations. That sort of helped us. But
Yeah,
thank
it
you so much.
shows. And the fact that you're missing a person like did not show. Like,
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so
Yeah.
much.
We were panicking a little bit
Yeah.
about that before we had to rearrange some
It was,
stuff.
yeah, we just got to know about it like last night. So it was really stressful.
well, you did a great job. So thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
really fun.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I hope all of you have a nice day. I don't know if there's more work to do after this.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.